This just in, folks. It turns out you don't need to agree with people in order to cooperate with them.
Throughout its long history, rhetoric has been seen as the art of persuasion, and if you're a longtime fan of this show, you'd know that we use rhetoric whenever we're trying to get people on the same page. Beyond that, though, rhetoric is useful because it's all about taking action. That is, we don't really use rhetoric to sit on the tops of mountains and contemplate transcendent truths. Instead, we use it to solve urgent problems here and now. Rhetoric is practical, and in some ways, you could think of rhetoric as the process of making a difference in the world through language. But I always see people making this rhetorical process so much harder than it needs to be, whether that's students writing a persuasive essay or politicians advocating for important policies. It's easy to get the idea that persuasion is about forcing someone to agree 100% with you, but that's really just not the case. In fact, we can persuade much more effectively and a whole lot more humanely when we lower our aim just a little bit and focus on cooperation instead of agreement. Now, before we get too far into this, it's probably a good idea to get onto the same page terminologically. Now, in common usage, agreement and cooperation are often used interchangeably, but for our purposes today, we'll be using them in specific and distinct ways in order to highlight their key differences and help us to be more strategic when it comes to persuading other people. So, when we talk about cooperation today, we mean working together or doing the same thing at the same time. Students who are working on a group project together are cooperating, and so are world leaders signing a trade agreement or roommates washing and drying the dishes. Cooperation involves practical actions. Then, for the sake of our discussion today, agreement can go much deeper. That is, when we agree with someone, we're not only doing the same thing as them, but we're doing it for the same reasons. So a group of people who are protesting the construction of a wind farm in order to protect an endangered species of bird are in agreement because not only are they doing the same thing, but they're doing it for the same reason. Agreement, then, involves ideological alignment. And now you can probably see where I'm headed with all this. It is infinitely easier to persuade someone to do something different than to believe something different. But it seems like we usually try to change beliefs first, and that makes this whole process so much harder than it needs to be. In fact, it means that we often get stuck fighting over beliefs instead of taking practical steps forward to accomplish actual change. But okay, that's enough abstractions for one day. Let's see how this looks in practice. This is Jen. Jen and her friends are trying to decide where to eat for lunch. But Jen doesn't want to eat just anywhere. You see, Jen is an ardent supporter of local businesses, and she has her heart set on having lunch at Gray's, a farm-to-table restaurant that has just opened up in town. Jen's friends, Rob and Terry, however, do not share her passion for local produce, so Jen is going to have to do some rhetorical work to get the group over to Gray's. And of course, she has two options. The first and more difficult option is to persuade them to agree with her, to have all the same reasons to get lunch at Gray's. She could give them a long lecture about the importance of supporting local business and the benefits of eating locally grown food. But we know it's probably not going to work. 15-minute lectures don't usually alter people's worldviews, and especially not when they're hungry for lunch. Now, the second, more reasonable option would be to aim for cooperation, to persuade her friends to eat lunch at Gray's without insisting that they do it for the same reasons. Taking this second route, Jen doesn't have to win them over to the cause of farm-to-table dining. Instead, she just has to give them good reasons to cooperate with her and go to Gray's for lunch. Luckily, Jen knows her friends and their core beliefs pretty well, so her persuasive strategy is clear. Her friend Terry is a committed and vocal vegan, a requirement that often complicates lunchtime decisions, but Jen knows that Gray's has an impressive vegan menu that has received sterling early reviews. So it's easy to win Terry's cooperation. She has a different reason for going, but it still contributes to Jen's overall goal of supporting local business. Now, Rob is not so animated about his dietary lifestyle, nor is he especially passionate about supporting local businesses. Really, he has sort of a reputation for being cheap. But Jen is prepared this time too. She was an early supporter of the restaurant, and as a thank you, the owner gave her a certificate for 20% off her first visit. She has generously agreed to let Rob use it. Now, Rob's no idealist, but he can't pass up a good deal, So he quickly cooperates with Jen's plan to go get lunch at Gray's. So just like that, Jen has accomplished the rhetorical maneuver of getting her little group to cooperate and support a local business over the lunch hour. Now they might all have different reasons for going, but that doesn't really matter. They're all going, and they're all going together, and that's what really counts. And we'll say more about this in just a little bit, but Jen hasn't tricked anyone into doing what she wants them to do. They're all going for reasons that they're genuinely happy about. So Jen hasn't used rhetoric to coerce her friends. Instead, she's used it to highlight motivating factors that give them a good reason to go and which they might have otherwise overlooked. So Jen may have won the lunch debate, but nobody is going to go home feeling like a loser. Admittedly, arranging a lunch appointment is pretty small scale, but it's a good example of how aiming for cooperation can be more achievable and more respectful than aiming for total agreement. And the same principle works on a larger scale too. For example, in a recent video, we talked about how someone with environmentalist motives can leverage a city council's financial motives in order to improve a city's ecosystem. Now, these two parties, of course, didn't see eye to eye, but they could still work together on a project that aligned with both of their different motives. And it works in practically every other situation too. Scientists who want to explore space can cooperate with military people who want to show off the range of their rockets. Grumpy people who hate the sound of loud car engines can cooperate with parents who want to protect their small children in order to get speed bumps installed in a neighborhood, and people who want to grow their YouTube channels can cooperate with viewers who want to see more videos about writing and rhetoric. You know, just for like a random example. So why not like and subscribe while you're here? But anyway, the basic point is this. When you run into someone or a group of someone who doesn't quite see the world as you do, you have two choices. You could get stuck in an endless fight, trying to get them to adopt all of your beliefs and philosophies first, or you could skip that drama and frustration, accept that different people have different beliefs, and then find a way to work together anyway. And I don't know about you, but to me, that second option sounds a whole lot more achievable and pleasant. Okay, at this point, here's a word of caution, or maybe more like 3 words of caution. First, sometimes agreement does matter. In most cases, getting good things done is more important than having everyone do them for the same reasons, but sometimes beliefs and motives are crucially important. For example, in a religious setting, doing the right thing for the right reason can often matter very much. So a religious leader may be more likely to focus on agreement than just cooperation. But for most of the political issues that we encounter in a pluralistic society, total agreement just doesn't really matter. Second, aiming for cooperation does not mean duping people into doing things against their own convictions. We're not talking about tricking people or manipulating them into doing things against their will. That's just not what rhetoric is for. Instead, persuading someone to cooperate with you involves reminding them of their own beliefs and then explaining why your plan makes sense for them. And third, cooperation often involves some kind of compromise. In our lunchtime example, the outcome was not a winner-take-all victory for Jen. In order to get what she wanted, she had to make some sacrifices, like giving her discount certificate to Rob. She gave up something less important in order to achieve something more important, and that will usually be the case for us as well. And that's probably a pretty good thing. I mean, who would you rather interact with? Somebody who insists on total agreement and says that you have to believe everything that they believe on every issue all the time? Or maybe someone who lets you keep your beliefs and then points out how their goals will be good for you as well? So you see, cooperation rhetoric is much less heavy-handed and controlling than agreement rhetoric. And that means that it's way more respectful and supportive of the wide range of people and beliefs that you're bound to encounter out there in the world. Now, I'd like to finish up by talking about why it's so important to understand the value of cooperation, and I'd like to do it by responding to a couple possible objections to the things that we've talked about today. On the one hand, I can imagine someone feeling a little uncomfortable with the idea of cooperation rhetoric because it might sound a bit opportunistic or unprincipled. Isn't it a little sketchy, someone might ask, to put results ahead of ideals? And my response is that that's not what this is about at all. Really, cooperation is about making sure that our attachment to our ideals does not get in the way of our responsibility to make good things happen. Cooperation helps us to see that progress is more important than perfection. We don't have to abandon our ideals just to get things done, and we shouldn't be asking other people to do that either. But if we insist that everyone else share our exact same beliefs, we're going to spend a long time waiting for our ideals to come to fruition, and the whole rest of the world is going to pass us by while we pout. And sure, there could be sketchy people who use persuasive techniques to accomplish sketchy things, but that's why it's so important to learn rhetoric. If you know how it works, you can spot it when people are misusing it and respond before they get a chance to do any real damage. Now, on the other hand, I can imagine someone saying that cooperation will only work in a perfect world. Who really believes that people can set aside their differences and cooperate? Doesn't that all sound just a little too idealistic? And to that, I'd say, nuh-uh. But then I'd say that rhetoric was never designed for a perfect world. In a truly perfect world, everyone would probably agree on everything just by default. No, rhetoric came about in an imperfect world, where people have different life experiences that produce different beliefs and convictions. If anything useful is ever going to happen, we have to learn how to cut through the tangle of opinions and actually get things done. And that is exactly what rhetoric is for. So this isn't some starry-eyed idealism, it's the stone-cold practical reality. If anything is ever going to happen, we're going to have to learn to cooperate with our audience, even and especially when our beliefs and motives are different. And it's really not that hard to do. When we understand rhetoric and we know our audience, it's super possible to leverage our differing beliefs and convictions to make meaningful progress on shared projects. People out there make cooperation sound so impossible, but really that's just because they never took a decent rhetoric class. And that's why I'm so glad that you're here with me now. It's people like you that really have the ability to make a positive difference because you're willing to sit through a whole video about how to do it. So thank you, truly thank you for watching and for subscribing. We're a small bunch with great potential, and it's always a thrill to see this group of rhetoricians grow. So please share your thoughts and questions below, but then more importantly, keep your eyes open for opportunities to cooperate with other people so that you can start building a better world, one imperfect rhetorical step at a time.